The day my wife, Morgan, moved into our new home on Pinewood Drive was supposed to be perfect. After 2 years of long-distance marriage, endless video calls, and fleeting weekend visits, she was finally coming home for good. I'd spent days preparing the house. Every surface sparkled, fresh flowers brightened the dining table, and a bold "Welcome Home" banner hung across our front porch. At 34, Morgan was a commanding presence, tall, athletic, with the quiet confidence of 8 years in military service. But I hadn't counted on the storm brewing 3 houses down in the form of Victoria Palmer, the self-proclaimed enforcer of our neighborhood's homeowners association, HOA. What unfolded over the next 24 hours turned our dream homecoming into a nightmare, exposing the cost of challenging a woman obsessed with control, and revealing the power of the one she underestimated. The low growl of a military truck's engine rumbled down Pinewood Drive, sending a thrill through me. I stood at the living room window, checking my watch every 30 seconds like a lovesick teenager. The neighborhood was calm, the kind of suburban stillness that promises peace but often conceals tension. I'd scrubbed the house for 3 days, ensuring every detail was flawless for Morgan's arrival. After 24 months of separation, her deployments, and my civilian life keeping us apart, this was our moment. The olive green truck rounded the corner, and my heart raced. Morgan stepped out, her movements precise, her posture radiating authority, a hallmark of her years as a military officer. She was striking in her crisp uniform, her eyes scanning the surroundings with the vigilance of someone who'd navigated combat zones. When she hugged me, I felt unstoppable, though I noticed her gaze never fully softened. "Old habits," she'd say with a warm laugh, brushing off the hyper-awareness that came with her service. As we stood in the driveway, joking about the banner and her escape from base housing, a sharp sound shattered the afternoon quiet. A door slammed 3 houses down, echoing like a gunshot. Victoria Palmer emerged, a middle-aged woman in a pink bathrobe, her face set in a scowl that could sour milk. She marched toward us with the intensity of a general leading a charge, phone in hand, snapping photos of the truck from every angle like a detective at a crime scene. I'd seen Victoria before, always perfectly dressed, always clutching a clipboard, always finding something to criticize. She was the HOA's compliance officer, a title she brandished like a weapon. Today, her focus was razor-sharp. Her fingers danced across her phone, posting to the neighborhood group chat, "Military invasion of our peaceful community." Victoria didn't bother with pleasantries. "Excuse me," she snapped, her voice cutting through the air like a jagged blade. "I'm Victoria Palmer, HOA compliance officer for this community. That vehicle violates Section 3B of our community guidelines. No commercial vehicles can park on residential streets for more than 30 minutes. Her tone demanded compliance, as if we should salute and obey. I stepped forward, keeping my voice diplomatic. "Ma'am, this is my wife, Morgan. She's moving her things from base housing. The truck's temporary." But Victoria sliced through my explanation with buzzsaw precision. "I don't care who she claims to be. Rules are rules." Her eyes narrowed as she sized up Morgan, who stood silently, her expression unreadable. "And another thing," Victoria continued, her voice rising for the neighbors now peeking from their windows, "I've checked our military databases. There's no record of active duty personnel at this address." Morgan's response was captivating. Where I was flustered, she was calm, almost amused. Her eyes studied Victoria with the precision of a scientist observing a specimen. She didn't speak, just tilted her head slightly, letting Victoria's tirade fill the silence. Her restraint unnerved Victoria, who was accustomed to instant submission. "This neighborhood has standards," Victoria declared, her voice climbing an octave. "I've maintained property values here for 12 years. I won't let some fake army wife and her pushover husband ruin what I've built." The words "fake army wife" stung like a slap, but Morgan didn't flinch. Her lips curved into a faint smile, the kind that hinted she was already 10 steps ahead. Victoria, oblivious to the shift, pressed her advantage. She dialed the HOA hotline right there in our driveway, speaking loudly enough for the street to hear. "Emergency violation in progress. Military vehicle. Possible fraud situation. Yes, I'll document everything for the report." Victoria's performance was theatrical, designed to assert dominance. She listed her credentials like a war hero recounting victories. "I've handled 6 other problem families in this community," she boasted. "The Johnsons moved after 3 months of proper enforcement. The Garcias couldn't handle the pressure of maintaining standards. 23 successful violations processed this year alone. I am the law in this neighborhood. Each word was a calculated blow, meant to intimidate and humiliate. Neighbors were emerging now, drawn by the spectacle. Mrs. Henderson, 2 houses down, looked concerned, while the elderly man across the street shook his head, his disapproval unclear. Morgan finally spoke, her voice steady as steel. "Ma'am, you seem very thorough. Tell me, do you know what real authority looks like?" The question hung in the air, a quiet challenge delivered with the confidence of someone who'd faced far greater threats than an HOA tyrant. Victoria scoffed, undeterred. "Honey, I've been dealing with troublemakers since before you were born. This is my neighborhood, and these are my rules." Morgan's smile widened, a glint of something predatory in her eyes. "I'm sure you have been dealing with troublemakers. Very interesting." Victoria, sensing she was losing control, delivered her final threat. "Tomorrow morning, I'm calling the police. We'll see how fake your military story is." She stormed back to her house, phone still clutched like a weapon, leaving tension in her wake. As Victoria retreated, Morgan calmly pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of her mid-rant, capturing her red-faced fury and pointing finger in perfect detail. "Why are you taking pictures?" I asked, my nerves frayed. Morgan's response was simple but heavy with intent. "Evidence, sweetheart. Always collect evidence." I realized then that my wife, who'd commanded troops in combat zones, was already strategizing. But what was she planning? And what was in that wallet of hers? Victoria was true to her word. At 6 a.m. the next morning, I woke to her voice carrying across the street. From our bedroom window, I saw her pacing her front porch, phone pressed to her ear, speaking with the gravity of someone reporting a national crisis. "I need to report suspicious individuals in our community," she told the 911 operator. "Military vehicle, possible stolen valor situation, could potentially be dangerous to our families." The word dangerous dripped with theatrical menace, as if our garage housed a terrorist cell. But Victoria didn't stop at the police. She launched a bureaucratic assault, contacting the tax office to claim we might be dodging vehicle registration fees and the fire department to suggest the truck was a safety hazard. Her recruitment campaign was equally relentless. She rallied neighbors via the group chat, painting us as threats to Pinewood Drive sanctity. By 7 a.m., her posts flooded the chat with phrases like protecting our community and upholding standards. She was building an army, and we were the enemy. I was a wreck, pacing the kitchen, wondering how our fresh start had unraveled. Morgan, however, was unshaken. She sipped her coffee, her eyes scanning the group chat with the focus she'd once used for battlefield reports. "She's good," Morgan said, almost admiringly. "Classic escalation tactics. Overwhelm the opponent with noise and pressure." I stared, incredulous. "You're not worried?" She shrugged, her smile enigmatic. "I've faced worse. Let her make her move." By 8 a.m., 2 police officers knocked on our door. Victoria stood on her lawn, arms crossed, her face smug with satisfaction. The officers, a seasoned veteran named Daniels and a younger recruit named Lee, were polite but firm. "We received a report about a military vehicle and possible fraudulent activity," Daniels said. "Can we see some identification?" I started to explain, my voice shaky, but Morgan stepped forward, her demeanor calm and commanding. "Of course, officers." She reached into her wallet, and I noticed Victoria inching closer, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Morgan pulled out a single card, handing it to Daniels with a steady hand. His eyes widened as he read it, and he passed it to Lee, whose eyebrows shot up. The air shifted, and Victoria's smugness wavered. "Ma'am," Daniels said, addressing Morgan with newfound respect, "this is a Department of Defense ID. High-level clearance." He turned to Victoria, who was now pale. "You reported a stolen valor situation. This officer's credentials are impeccable." Morgan's smile was serene, and she nodded toward the truck. "The vehicle is government property, temporarily assigned for my relocation." Victoria's mouth opened, but no words came. Her carefully built world of control was collapsing. Morgan's ID wasn't just any military ID. It marked her as a decorated officer with a security clearance that outranked Victoria's wildest assumptions. The officers apologized, tipped their hats to Morgan, and left. Victoria retreated to her house, her reins shaken. Word spread quickly. By evening, the neighborhood chat buzzed with a new narrative. Victoria's overreach had backfired. Morgan's quiet authority and irrefutable credentials dismantled her power play. Over the next week, neighbors began questioning Victoria's iron grip on the HOA. Her 12-year reign as Pinewood Drive's unofficial dictator was over, replaced by respect for the officer who'd moved in, and the evidence she'd calmly collected to turn the tables. The morning after Victoria Palmer's initial confrontation, her campaign against us intensified with the precision of a political operative. She went door to door along Pinewood Drive, not canvassing for votes but building a coalition of fear. Her approach was calculated, her tone a perfect blend of concern and authority. "For everyone's safety, we need to document this properly," she told Mrs. Henderson, 2 houses down, her voice dripping with faux sincerity. "They could be anyone, identity thieves, criminals, who knows what kind of people we're dealing with." Her words were designed to make neighbors nod instinctively, planting seeds of doubt before we could even unpack our boxes. To the young couple with small children across the street, she lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Military people often have PTSD. Could be dangerous around families. You never know when they might snap." Victoria's tactics were insidious, her paranoia cloaked in reasonableness. She'd start with a legitimate concern, neighborhood standards, property values, then subtly shift to personal attacks. "I'm not saying anything definitive," she'd murmur, her eyes wide with feigned worry, "but don't you think it's strange they moved in so quietly? And that truck, who knows what they're transporting?" Her gift was making suspicion sound like common sense, all while maintaining plausible deniability. But her real masterstroke was online. Within an hour of her 911 call, the neighborhood apps and message boards buzzed with her posts. "Fake military family threatening our community," one headline blared, accompanied by grainy photos of our truck and house. "Stolen valor investigation in progress, neighbors," another declared. She painted us as everything from con artists to potential terrorists, all because we'd parked a military vehicle in our own driveway. The speed and coordination of her attack were almost admirable. If it hadn't been targeting my family, I might have respected her tactical efficiency. Victoria had turned the neighborhood watch into psychological warfare, and she was just getting started. The sound of sirens approaching Pinewood Drive sent my stomach plummeting. 2 squad cars rounded the corner, their lights flashing but sirens mercifully silent, signaling this wasn't a high-priority emergency. Radio chatter crackled as the vehicles pulled up to our curb. Police Chief Martinez, a weathered man in his 50s who looked like he'd seen every shade of human nonsense, stepped out of the first car. Officer Thompson, younger and eager, emerged from the second, carrying himself with the by-the-book intensity of someone still proving himself. Within minutes, at least 15 neighbors had gathered, drawn by the spectacle like moths to a flame. Victoria positioned herself at the forefront, relishing her role as the community's self-appointed spokesperson. "Officers, thank God you're here," she declared, her voice carrying the gravitas of an Oscar-worthy performance. She gestured toward our house like a prosecutor pointing to a crime scene. "These people have been threatening our peaceful community. The woman claims to be military but has absolutely no proof. The man is clearly intimidated into silence, probably afraid of what she'll do if he speaks up." Her words were calibrated for maximum impact, ensuring the growing crowd heard every syllable. She'd cast herself as the brave defender of suburban tranquility, standing up to mysterious interlopers. Chief Martinez nodded, his expression neutral but tinged with weariness, suggesting he'd dealt with Victoria before. "Ma'am, we'll handle this properly. We need to verify identities and check for any actual violations of local ordinances." His tone was professional, but there was a hint of exasperation, as if he knew this was more theater than threat. From our living room window, my hands shook as I watched the circus unfold. We'd done nothing wrong, yet I felt like a criminal awaiting judgment. Victoria stood among the neighbors, her triumphant smile signaling she believed she'd already won. My mind spiraled. What if they arrested us? What if this damaged Morgan's military career? What if our neighbors decided we were troublemakers? Morgan, however, was unfazed. She calmly laced up her shoes, her movements deliberate, as if preparing for a routine briefing rather than a police confrontation. "Officers, we've done nothing wrong," I managed, my voice cracking as we stepped outside. "That truck is a scheduled pickup. My wife is legitimate military personnel. Victoria cut me off before I could finish. He can't even prove it. Show them documents. Show them anything that proves you're not just pretending to be soldiers. Chief Martinez stepped forward, his tone courteous but firm. Ma'am, we're going to need to see identification from both of you. This was Victoria's moment, the climax she'd orchestrated. I fumbled for my wallet, my nerves fraying, but all eyes were on Morgan. She moved with the precision of a seasoned officer, reaching for her back pocket slowly, as if time bent to her will. The crowd held its breath, even the birds seemed to hush. The leather of her wallet creaked softly as she opened it, the rustle of papers almost theatrical in the silence. Then, she withdrew a single card, holding it up to catch the morning sunlight. The military ID gleamed, its silver eagle practically glowing. Colonel Morgan Swift, United States Army. The silence was absolute, like the world had paused. Victoria's transformation was a study in human emotion, unfolding in seconds. At second 1, her confident smile held firm. By second 2, her eyes locked on the ID, struggling to process it. Second 3, her smile wavered as realization crept in. Second 4, her jaw began to drop, almost in slow motion. Second 5, the color drained from her face, as if someone had pulled a plug. Second 6 through 10, she stood frozen, a mannequin of shock, her mouth agape, eyes wide with disbelief. The woman who declared herself the law of Pinewood Drive had just discovered she'd called the police on a colonel in the United States Army. Chief Martinez's reaction was immediate. His posture shifted, his eyes registering the rank and credentials. "Colonel Swift, my sincere apologies, ma'am," he said, his voice thick with respect. Both officers snapped to attention, offering sharp salutes that spoke of deep deference to Morgan's rank and service. The contrast with Victoria's frozen state was almost comical, real law enforcement showing respect to genuine authority, while the self-appointed neighborhood dictator stood paralyzed by her miscalculation. Officer Thompson, visibly embarrassed, lowered his salute and muttered to Martinez, "Should we file a report about false emergency calls, Chief?" The implication was clear. Victoria had wasted police resources on a baseless complaint. The crowd's reaction rippled through the neighbors like a shockwave. "Holy crap, did you see that?" someone whispered. "Victoria called the cops on a colonel," another gasped. "Is she insane?" The murmurs grew louder as the reality sank in. Victoria, who'd crowned herself judge and jury of the neighborhood, had humiliated herself spectacularly. She stammered, trying to recover with feeble protests about fake IDs and military deception, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Martinez shut her down with professional firmness. "Ma'am, this is legitimate federal identification. I strongly suggest you reconsider the nature of your complaints." Thompson's embarrassment was palpable. A young officer building his reputation, he'd been dragged into a harassment call disguised as a legitimate complaint. Martinez, a veteran of neighborhood disputes, seemed almost relieved to encounter a situation with such clear-cut facts. His experience had taught him to distinguish genuine concerns from petty vendettas, and this was firmly the latter. Morgan, meanwhile, handled the situation with the grace of someone who'd faced far greater challenges. "Officers, no harm done. Thank you for your professionalism and service," she said, her voice calm but commanding. As the police prepared to leave, Martinez spoke quietly to Thompson, his words carrying in the morning air. "Make a note about this address and keep an eye on Palmer. People like her don't stop." Victoria heard every word, and her face shifted from red with embarrassment to white with fear. She'd gone from wielding authority to being under scrutiny. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd been flipped entirely. As the squad cars pulled away, Victoria stumbled back to her house, her earlier confidence shattered. The neighbors dispersed, their whispers now a chorus of disbelief and amusement. Morgan's ID wasn't just a card, it was a revelation. As a colonel with high-level clearance, she carried a weight of authority Victoria could never comprehend. The neighborhood chat, once Victoria's propaganda platform, turned against her. Posts questioning her judgment flooded the app, and neighbors began openly challenging her HOA dominance. Her 12-year reign as Pinewood Drive's unofficial dictator crumbled in a single morning, undone by a woman who'd faced real battles and knew the power of evidence. Morgan's quiet collection of photos, Victoria's rants, her pointing finger, became the silent weapon that exposed her overreach. Our new beginning, briefly threatened, was now secure, and the neighborhood saw us not as interlopers but as the couple who'd humbled the tyrant. After the humiliating police incident, Victoria Palmer's house fell eerily silent for 3 days. No pacing on her front porch, no loud phone calls waking the neighborhood, no clipboard-wielding patrols. The quiet should have been a relief, but it felt like the calm before a storm. From our bedroom window, I could see her shadow moving behind closed curtains, pacing like a caged predator. At night, the glow of her computer monitor cast eerie patterns on her walls, suggesting she was plotting something sinister. Victoria wasn't retreating, she was regrouping. I could almost hear her thoughts from 3 houses away. How dare they embarrass me? 20 years in this neighborhood, and no one makes Victoria Palmer look like a fool. Unbeknownst to us, she was conducting her own intelligence operation, scouring the internet for military complaint procedures, ways to challenge officer authority, and loopholes to report misconduct. She was determined to reclaim her dominance, muttering to herself, "If she wants to play the military card, I'll show her real power. I still have connections. I still have influence." Victoria's retaliation was devastating in its precision. She'd studied our routines, when we left for work, when Morgan returned from her runs, when we had visitors. Her attacks were timed for maximum disruption. On the 4th day, I came home to find 4 violation notices taped to our front door like a bureaucratic declaration of war. The first cited an excessive noise complaint at 6:15 a.m., referencing Morgan's morning workout routine, though it was just her running in place on a yoga mat. The second claimed a vehicle positioning violation, alleging my car extended 2.3 inches beyond the property line, a spot I'd parked in for months without issue. The third targeted the welcome home banner I'd hung for Morgan, calling it an unauthorized signage display lacking HOA approval. The fourth nitpicked our landscaping, claiming our hedge exceeded the 42-inch maximum by 1 inch, despite being professionally trimmed 2 weeks prior. Day 5 brought 6 more violations, each more absurd than the last. A trash receptacle placement error accused us of putting bins out 14 hours before pickup, as if taking out the garbage the night before was a crime. An exterior lighting violation claimed our 40-watt porch bulb was too bright. A paint color discrepancy retroactively deemed our front door's blue shade unapproved, though it was original to the house. A package delivery disruption blamed us for an Amazon truck briefly blocking a neighbor's view. A pet noise complaint alleged excessive barking, despite us not owning a pet. Finally, a suspicious gathering violation cited 3 people, Morgan, me, and a pizza delivery guy, as an illegal assembly. Each violation carried an $85 fine, totaling $850 in 2 days for fabricated infractions. The financial pressure was clearly designed to force compliance through economic warfare. But Victoria's campaign went beyond paperwork. She followed Morgan on her morning runs, filming her like a fitness paparazzi, claiming to document suspicious behavior. She parked her car to block our driveway, forcing me to ask her to move daily. Her yappy dog, previously uninterested in our yard, was now walked exclusively on our lawn, where it relieved itself without cleanup. At 11 p.m. each night, loud music blared from her house, stopping at 10:59 p.m., 1 minute shy of the noise ordinance. Her psychological warfare escalated into near-stalking. She stood in her yard for hours, staring at our house with surveillance-like intensity, and took flash photos through our windows at night, claiming to document suspicious activity. Passive-aggressive notes appeared on our windshield. Some people think rules don't apply to them. Community standards exist for a reason. True neighbors respect property values. Victoria's rumor mill was relentless. She'd created a concerned neighbors message group, excluding us, where she spread lies about PTSD and dangerous military behavior, building sentiment against the troublemakers who'd brought unwanted attention to Pinewood Drive. Her harassment was calculated to create constant stress, with violations arriving unpredictably, 3 in 1 day, then nothing for 2, then a weekend citation. It was psychological torture disguised as civic duty, executed with the precision of someone who'd mastered making lives miserable while maintaining legitimacy. The pressure was crushing me. I wasn't sleeping, jumping at every sound, checking locks obsessively, as if we were under siege. The $850 in fines loomed, with the threat of thousands more. "Morgan," I said one evening, staring at the latest violation notices, "maybe we should comply, pay the fines, keep our heads down. Maybe she'll leave us alone if we follow her rules." The words felt like surrender, and Morgan's look, a mix of disappointment and understanding, confirmed it. "Ryan," she said quietly, I spent 8 years defending our freedoms overseas. I'm not surrendering them to a suburban dictator. That night, as Victoria's precisely timed music blared, I whispered to Morgan in the darkness, maybe she's right. Maybe we don't belong here. Maybe we should move, start over somewhere peaceful. The words tasted bitter, but the stress was overwhelming. Morgan sat up, her military training evident in her posture. Ryan, I've faced insurgents with actual weapons, not HOA paperwork. I've commanded troops under fire in real combat zones. I'm not backing down from a bully with a clipboard. The next morning, Morgan opened her laptop and created a folder named Operation Neighborhood Peace. She began documenting everything: Victoria's car parked illegally near fire hydrants, her dog running off-leash in violation of city ordinances, her own noise violations. Rule 1 of warfare, Morgan said, her voice steady as she photographed Victoria's hypocrisy with military precision. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. Victoria's about to learn what real strategy looks like. To predict whether Victoria will back down or double down, let's analyze her behavior. Victoria's identity is tied to her control over Pinewood Drive, built over 20 years of enforcing HOA rules with ruthless efficiency. The public humiliation of being proven wrong about Morgan's military credentials, by a colonel no less, threatens her self-image as the neighborhood's unchallenged authority. People like Victoria, who thrive on dominance, rarely retreat after a setback. Her 3-day silence, paired with her intense research and planning, suggests she's not conceding but preparing a more sophisticated attack. Her history of targeting families until they moved, 6 in total, shows a pattern of escalation, not surrender. The barrage of violations, psychological tactics, and rumor spreading indicate she's doubling down, aiming to reassert control through relentless pressure. However, Victoria's miscalculation with Morgan, a decorated officer with strategic training, introduces a variable she can't control. Morgan's calm, evidence-based approach, documenting Victoria's violations and preparing for a counteroffensive, suggests Victoria has met her match. Morgan's military background equips her to outmaneuver Victoria's bureaucratic warfare, potentially exposing her overreach to the HOA or authorities. Victoria's connections and influence may give her confidence, but her tactics rely on intimidation, not legal standing. If Morgan leverages her evidence at the upcoming HOA meeting, Victoria's campaign could collapse, especially if neighbors, already questioning her after the police incident, turn against her. Given her obsessive need for control, Victoria is likely to double down, escalating her attacks with more violations, rumors, or even attempts to involve higher authorities. But her arrogance blinds her to Morgan's strategic advantage. Morgan's plan, hinted at by Operation Neighborhood Peace, likely involves presenting undeniable evidence of Victoria's harassment, photos, videos, and records of her own violations, to dismantle her credibility. Victoria may believe she's untouchable, but her overreach could lead to her downfall, especially if Morgan exposes her at the emergency HOA meeting. On the evening of the meeting, Victoria arrived at the community center 30 minutes early, rolling in with the confidence of a general who'd never lost a battle. She carried her clipboard like a shield, her posture radiating authority as she greeted neighbors with a practiced smile. But her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, a sign she knew the stakes were higher now. Morgan, meanwhile, arrived with a folder of evidence, her demeanor calm but resolute, ready to turn Victoria's own tactics against her. What do I think Morgan discovered about Victoria? Morgan likely uncovered evidence of Victoria's pattern of harassment, possibly including complaints from past neighbors like the Johnsons or Garcias, or violations of HOA and city rules that Victoria herself has committed. She may have found legal or procedural errors in Victoria's citations, or even a history of frivolous complaints that could discredit her with the HOA board. Morgan's military intelligence training suggests she's building a case to expose Victoria's abuse of power, potentially forcing her to back down or face consequences. Will Victoria back down or double down? Victoria's personality and history point to doubling down. Her need to maintain control will drive her to escalate. More violations, more rumors, perhaps even attempts to involve external agencies. But Morgan's strategic counterattack, backed by evidence and her authoritative presence, could turn the neighborhood against Victoria, ending her reign as Pinewood Drive's tyrant. Victoria Palmer arrived at the Pinewood Drive Community Center 30 minutes before the emergency HOA meeting, exuding the confidence of a general who'd already won the war. She claimed the front row, her briefcase brimming with what she called evidence, greeting each board member by name, Linda, Tom, Patricia, with the warmth of a seasoned manipulator. "Thank you for expediting this emergency session," she said, her tone measured, professional, the voice of a concerned citizen forced to act for the greater good. "I know how busy everyone is, but the situation has become untenable for our community." She'd clearly spent hours rehearsing, likely perfecting every gesture in front of a mirror. As neighbors filed in, Victoria began her presentation with theatrical precision. "What we're dealing with is systematic intimidation by individuals who believe military service grants them privileges above community standards. It doesn't." She opened her briefcase, revealing meticulously organized folders, printed photos, and official-looking documents, a masterclass in harassment disguised as civic duty. Her evidence was impressive in scope: photos of our military truck angled to look menacing, time-stamped noise complaints framing Morgan's morning workouts as deliberate disturbances, and witness statements claiming neighbors felt intimidated by our presence. Each document was formatted with professional care, worded to sound reasonable rather than vindictive. The community center buzzed with tension as 25 residents, the largest HOA turnout in years, filled the seats. I recognized faces I'd only waved to, isolated by Victoria's campaign. The Johnsons' former neighbors looked uneasy, likely recalling their own run-ins with her tactics. An elderly couple from the street's end glanced nervously between us and Victoria, unsure what to believe. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, teetering between vindication and disaster. Victoria basked in the attention, nodding to supporters and adjusting her evidence display with a flourish. Her presentation was a study in manipulation. "I've given 12 years to this neighborhood," she declared, her voice thick with martyr-like passion, "protecting property values, maintaining standards, keeping our families safe from disruptions like this. Now, I'm being targeted, harassed, threatened for doing my job." Her voice cracked on threatened, a calculated touch suggesting fear rather than rage. She was a political operative in suburban clothing, commanding the room's attention. "These individuals have shown contempt for our standards," she continued, gesturing to her evidence packets. "They've used intimidation tactics, violated multiple HOA regulations, and created an atmosphere of fear." She paused for effect, scanning the crowd. "I request immediate enforcement of all outstanding violations and consideration of lease termination for continued non-compliance." Her words hung like a guillotine, aiming to expel us from Pinewood Drive. Morgan and I slipped into the back as Victoria concluded her salvo. Several board members nodded sympathetically, swayed by her polished performance. She'd framed herself as the victim and us as aggressors, despite having called the police on a decorated colonel for moving into her own home. When the board asked if we'd respond, Morgan stood with the calm authority of someone who'd briefed generals. "May I present some facts to counter these accusations?" she asked politely. The room fell silent as she walked to the front, carrying only a manila folder, a stark contrast to Victoria's theatrical briefcase and poster boards. "Substance versus show. Mrs. Palmer has made serious accusations about our character and compliance," Morgan began, her voice steady. "I believe in facts over emotions, evidence over innuendo. Let me share documented facts with this assembly." What followed was a precision strike dismantling Victoria's case. "Evidence Package 1, Morgan announced, connecting her laptop to the projector. A video showed Victoria dumping her trash into our bin at 5:47 a.m. The timestamp clear, her face unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the crowd as their rule enforcer was caught breaking her own regulations. Morgan pressed on. "Evidence Package 2, Documentation Fraud and Witness Manipulation." She revealed that Victoria's multiple witness statements came from two close friends who'd never seen the alleged incidents. Photos showed Victoria's own violations: her car blocking sidewalk access, her garden exceeding height limits, her unauthorized yard decorations flouting signage rules. This noise complaint was filed at 6:15 a.m. "For exercise sounds," Morgan said, displaying the document. "But security footage from my base shows I was at work." Mrs. Palmer filed a false report. She moved to Evidence Package 3, Systematic Harassment and Stalking. Phone logs showed Victoria called Morgan's workplace 6 times in 2 weeks. 47 photos of our property were taken from public areas. Neighbor security footage documented Victoria following Morgan on her runs. The room's dynamic shifted like a tectonic plate. Whispers spread, "I didn't know she was taking pictures." No wonder the Johnsons moved. "She complained about my fence, too." Neighbors realized they'd been under surveillance by their self-appointed protector. Evidence package 4, financial manipulation and selective enforcement, Morgan concluded, displaying a chart showing 18 violations against us in 14 days versus 3 for the entire neighborhood. Processing times revealed Victoria's complaints got priority treatment. Phone records showed 47 calls to city agencies in 2 weeks, weaponizing municipal services against us. Mrs. Palmer, Morgan said, locking eyes with her, you've accused us of seeking special treatment due to military service. But your behavior suggests you believe you deserve special treatment because of your HOA connections. Victoria's facade crumbled. She leapt up, her voice shrill. This is character assassination. They're using military intimidation tactics. You can't trust their evidence. They've manipulated witnesses, turned our community into a war zone. She lunged toward the projector, as if destroying it would erase the truth. I stepped forward to block her, and she swung wildly before 2 board members restrained her. Ma'am, I said quietly, everyone can see who's causing the disturbance. The board's 10-minute deliberation felt endless, but their decision was swift. All violations against us were dismissed as frivolous. Victoria was fined $500 for abusing the complaint system, with a warning placed in her permanent HOA file. A new policy was announced, requiring corroborating evidence from unrelated sources for future complaints, unofficially dubbed the Victoria Palmer Rule. Victoria stormed out, shouting threats about legal action, but her empire was collapsing. The neighborhood chat, once her propaganda tool, turned against her, with posts questioning her tactics and demanding accountability. Her 12-year reign as Pinewood Drive's dictator ended in a single evening. Morgan's Operation Neighborhood Peace had worked. Her evidence, videos, photos, logs, exposed Victoria's harassment, leveraging her military precision to outmaneuver a suburban tyrant. Neighbors, once swayed by Victoria's rumors, now saw her for what she was, a bully hiding behind bureaucracy. The Johnsons' former neighbors apologized to us the next day, sharing stories of Victoria's past campaigns. The elderly couple invited us for coffee, eager to distance themselves from her influence. The financial pressure of $850 in fines lifted, and the psychological toll began to ease. Morgan's calm resolve had turned our nightmare into a victory, proving that real authority doesn't need a clipboard, it needs facts. As for whether Victoria will back down or double down, her behavior points to escalation. Her identity is rooted in control, and the public humiliation at the HOA meeting threatens her core. Her 3-day silence after the police incident was not surrender but strategic regrouping, as evidenced by her subsequent barrage of violations. Her threats as she left the meeting suggest she's not done. She may pursue legal action, rally loyalists, or target us with new tactics. But Morgan's evidence has shifted the neighborhood's perception, and the new HOA policy limits her power. Victoria's connections may give her confidence, but her overreach has alienated allies. Morgan likely discovered Victoria's history of driving out families, her own rule violations, and procedural abuses, using them to dismantle her credibility. Victoria may try to double down, but with the community watching and Morgan's strategic advantage, her campaign is likely to implode, ending her reign for good. Victoria Palmer stormed out of the HOA meeting, her threats of appeals, lawsuits, and constitutional rights echoing in the community center. Her words were bold, but as she reached the parking lot, her voice betrayed her. On the phone, she spoke with a nervous edge. Yes, I need to file a complaint about HOA corruption and board manipulation. What? You need my address? It's 1247 Pinewood Drive. The authority she'd wielded for years was gone, replaced by uncertainty. Who was she calling? And why did she sound so shaken? Was her plan about to backfire? 2 weeks later, life on Pinewood Drive felt almost normal. Victoria's house was a fortress of silence. No porch pacing, no clipboard patrols, no confrontations. Her curtains stayed drawn, shielding her from a neighborhood that had rejected her reign. I was sleeping through the night again, and Morgan enjoyed her morning runs without Victoria's surveillance. Maybe she's learned her lesson, I said hopefully one evening, grilling burgers on our deck. Maybe she's backing down. Morgan, with her military-honed instincts, wasn't convinced. People like Victoria don't fade away, she said. They regroup, adapt, and find new angles. The most dangerous enemy is one who's learned from their mistakes. Her suspicions were confirmed on Saturday morning when a moving truck rumbled down Pinewood Drive, stopping at 12:45, the house next to Victoria's. A young woman stepped out, stretching with the confidence of someone starting fresh. In her early 30s, athletic, with a genuine smile, she waved at everyone she saw. That afternoon, she knocked on our door. "Sophie Martinez," she introduced herself, pointing toward Victoria's house. "Just moved in next door to that place." Our conversation was a breath of normalcy after weeks of drama. "Heard there was some excitement recently?" Sophie asked, her tone casually curious. "Something about lots of complaints?" I hedged, "Just some misunderstandings with a community member." Sophie grinned. "Oh, I hate those Karen types who think they run everything and make everyone miserable because they're bored." We laughed, relieved to meet someone who understood Victoria's game. Through Victoria's window, I saw her curtains twitch. She was watching her new target. Victoria's comeback began a week later, following her familiar playbook. She approached Sophie with fake friendliness, introducing herself as the community standards coordinator and offering to review guidelines. When Sophie didn't bow to her authority, Victoria unleashed her violation strategy. Citations appeared: flowerbed extends 6 inches beyond approved property line. Vehicle parked 17 consecutive hours, creating appearance of abandonment. Music audible during quiet hours, targeting Sophie's humming while gardening. Victoria was recycling her tactics, confident they'd break Sophie as they had others. But Sophie was different. Instead of fear, she responded with amusement, photographing each citation with clinical detachment, maintaining her friendly smile even when catching Victoria snapping surveillance photos. When Victoria's dog defecated on Sophie's lawn without cleanup, Sophie documented it, cleaned it up, and waved cheerfully at Victoria's window. When Victoria filed an HOA complaint about suspicious late-night activity, Sophie provided her hospital night shift schedule and supervisor's contact, dismantling the claim with professional ease. It was like watching a chess master outplay someone stuck on checkers. Sophie's lack of fear was striking. Where other neighbors had caved or moved under Victoria's pressure, Sophie treated each violation like a puzzle to solve. She waved at Victoria's surveillance post, sometimes posing for photos, stripping away the intimidation. It was psychological warfare in reverse. Victoria, the hunter, was now the hunted. The revelation came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Sophie was watering her garden, Victoria stationed behind her curtains, when Sophie's phone rang on speaker. "Hi, Dad," she said cheerfully, her voice carrying across the neighborhood. I paused my yard work to listen. "How's the new place?" a familiar male voice asked. "Great, very educational," Sophie replied, smiling. "Any issues with the neighbor we discussed?" "Victoria Palmer at 1247 Pinewood Drive, just like you described," Sophie said. "She's been active with her complaints." "Document everything for the official file," the voice instructed. I froze, recognizing it, Chief Martinez, who'd responded to Victoria's fraudulent 911 call and told his officer to keep an eye on Palmer. "Already on it, Dad," Sophie confirmed. "Photos, timestamps, violation notices. The harassment pattern is textbook. Your training paid off." Pride filled his voice. "Good work. Your mother and I are proud of you for taking this assignment seriously." Then the bombshell: "Thanks, Chief Martinez." Victoria's teacup crashed to her floor, the sound audible from our yard. Her face went from pink to white, her legs buckling as she gripped the window frame. Sophie wasn't just a neighbor, she was Chief Martinez's daughter, placed next door to monitor Victoria's behavior. Every complaint, every violation, every petty act was now being documented for law enforcement. Sophie, noticing Victoria watching, waved cheerfully. "Beautiful day, isn't it, Mrs. Palmer? Perfect for community monitoring. Tell Mom I'll be home for dinner Tuesday." She hung up, her smile now unmistakably official. The irony was exquisite. Victoria, who'd weaponized law enforcement against neighbors, was now under surveillance by the police chief's daughter, whose job was to document her every move. Her years of terrorizing Pinewood Drive with false reports had backfired. She was living next to law enforcement itself. The following weekend, Pinewood Drive hosted its first real community barbecue in years. Everyone attended except Victoria. Children played, adults shared stories, free from fear of citations. Sophie was the social hub, organizing games and connecting neighbors who'd been isolated under Victoria's reign. I hung a sign by our garden. Pinewood Drive, peaceful community, established 2025. Through her curtains, Victoria watched the celebration of the community she tried to control, knowing her actions were under scrutiny. As I enjoyed the barbecue, another moving truck pulled up to the house on Victoria's other side. Who was moving in now? The neighborhood was changing, and Victoria's era was over. What happened to Victoria? Her plan backfired spectacularly. Sophie's presence as Chief Martinez's daughter meant every move was documented, likely leading to further HOA sanctions or legal consequences for harassment and false reports. The new policy requiring corroborating evidence crippled her ability to file frivolous complaints. With neighbors united against her and her credibility shattered, Victoria likely faced increasing isolation. She might sell her house to escape scrutiny or persist in futile legal battles, but her influence is gone. The new moving truck suggests another neighbor unfazed by her tactics, further weakening her position. Was this justice or too harsh? It was justice. Victoria's 12-year campaign of harassment, driving out families, spreading rumors, and abusing authority, demanded accountability. Sophie's monitoring and Morgan's evidence exposed her systematically, restoring fairness to Pinewood Drive. The $500 fine and HOA warning were proportionate, targeting her abuse of power without excessive cruelty. Her downfall came from her own actions, not vindictive punishment. Will Victoria's plan backfire? Yes, it already has. Her attempt to reassert control through complaints and surveillance was turned against her by Sophie's official monitoring. The neighborhood's rejection and the HOA's new rules ensure her tactics are ineffective. Her call about HOA corruption likely went to a city office, where Chief Martinez's influence would discredit her claims, especially with Sophie's evidence. Victoria's uncertainty in the parking lot reflects her realization that she's lost control. What happens next? Victoria may attempt one last desperate move, perhaps a lawsuit or appeal to an external authority, but her lack of credible evidence and history of false reports will undermine her. The new neighbor on her other side could be another ally in the community's push for peace, further isolating her. With Sophie's ongoing documentation and the neighborhood's unity, Victoria might sell her house to avoid further scrutiny or face legal consequences if her harassment escalates. Pinewood Drive, now a true community, will thrive without her tyranny.